The old school renaissance or rules or revival of tabletop role-playing games puts the focus on a more nostalgic and traditional style of play, all about the dungeon crawl, combat, and survival, and less focus on the storytelling of modern games. With newer D20 hybrids such as Shadowdark and Morkborg, there's a wide spectrum of flavors. And while the OSR style is not to my particular taste, I do think there are some juicy rules we can take and adapt from quasi-OSR games like Dungeon Crawl Classics to drop into D&D or Pathfinder. Now I'm finna bust open 7 rules you can steal from DCC for your D&D campaign. And stay tuned to the end for a teensy bit of inside baseball about making these videos. You're gonna like this one. First, let's rap about the dice chain. DCC uses a wide range of dice beyond the typical polyhedrals because it has more than just the standard modifiers. It also adds the modifiers of using dice with larger or smaller ranges. For example, if you as an attacker are invisible, you would get a +2 to your attack roll, but if you're using a weapon you're not trained to use, you would get -1d to the roll, which means instead of rolling a d20, you roll a d16. This is called moving up or down the chain. Now, it's a lot of added complexity to toss in a bunch of new dice you probably don't physically own. So how could we use this dice chain method in D&D? I think in certain circumstances it would be useful to change out the standard D20 to use a different die. One thing I do in my home game is when I have my party roll for random overland travel encounters, if they have no ranger in the party, I make them roll a D12. If there's a ranger or they have a map or some other solution, then they get a D20. This could also be useful for initiative. You could toss out the standard D20 for initiative and make your slow and clunky wizard roll 1d12, while the super speedy Harengon rogue with the alert feat gets 2d12 or 4d6. If you feel like the standard D20 plus Dex initiative isn't a fair system, consider using a version of this dice chain to mix things up. Second on our list is the funnel. This is common to a lot of OSR and retro games, but DCC has a very specific philosophy on character creation. It says, player characters are not created by staying up all night devising a unique and interesting backstory. You roll up 0-level untrained and uneducated peasants and play that unique backstory out. We highly suggest each player roll up multiple 0-level characters, at least 3, possibly more. Don't get attached. Characters that survive their first dungeon then choose classes and become worth remembering. It's this insistence on randomization and omitting backstory that I find fascinating, because the rules go on to say there are essentially no opportunities for min-max play, and yet players find themselves attached to their plucky little serfs who have done such amazing deeds at low levels. And how would this work in D&D? I suppose I'm basically suggesting you try out a funnel in your next campaign. Every player makes 3 PCs who are 0-level characters. Initially give everyone a 10 in every ability score, no armor, 1 weapon, 1 cantrip for the casters. Limit the backstory to a name and a prior occupation, and then let the rest of it play out organically at the table. Because what's more remarkable and fun to play? The rogue prodigal son of the Duke, who already has studded leather armor and sneak attack at level 1, or the civilian nobody who becomes somebody after clearing out a dungeon full of skeletons against all odds. Then perhaps after the first session, you take all those who survive and give them classes, the standard array of ability scores, weapons, armor, first level spells, etc. I haven't tried this personally, but it's an idea that I find intriguing. Your mileage may vary. Next, let's chat about death and dying. A lot of old school games have the strict rule 0 HP and you're just dead, chump, but DCC is a little more flexible. 0-level characters die at 0 HP, but leveled characters have until the end of the next round to receive healing before they kick the bucket. Even then, they receive a physical scar and suffer a permanent loss of 1 point of stamina. Stamina is roughly equivalent to Constitution. And I think we can port this over to D&D by giving con penalties when a PC is downed. Hold on, let me explain. I've always felt like the carousel of going down, then being revived, etc. in combat is too hand-wavy. I've previously recommended that PCs who drop to 0 HP and are then healed could get something like the Summoning Sickness, where they suffer the effect of the slow spell for a turn. But I do like this idea of the stamina penalty. I propose as a rule to steal for D&D is that for each failed death save, you take a -1 or a -2 to your con score until your next long rest. This makes sense to me because you should be weakened by being knocked unconscious. You could also do levels of exhaustion, but the 6th level system of exhaustion from the 2014 PHB is dumb and I hate it, so there you go. And hey, since you're here, can I get you to do a like and subscribe below? It just costs you a couple of clicks and it really helps out. Here's a quick one, and that is concentration. In DCC, when a caster is concentrating on a spell, they are limited to only walking at half speed and taking no other actions. I think this is too punitive for D&D, but we could steal some elements of it. I think possibly having your speed cut in half is fair, unless you can make a roll with your spellcasting modifier against a DC 8 plus the spell level, or better yet, a D20 roll under your spellcasting ability score. This brings in a little more flavor of how good are you at casting in general, and how would that affect your ability to do magic. The next idea is quite ingenious, and that's DCC's spell burn concept. This is kinda similar to Blades in the Dark's Devil's Bargain feature in that you make a sacrifice or accept a penalty to gain another form of advantage. The DCC rules say a magic user can harness more magical energies if willing to make a mortal sacrifice, including offering part of their body or soul to a demon, sacrificing personal strength to foster a demigod's greedy growth, or even by burning the very life energy in their own cells. This is basically saying I will take a temporary -2 or 3 or 5 to my stamina or agility score to get a +2 or 3 or 5 to the spell attack roll. Then you get the bonus, and the penalty stays active until you can rest a number of nights equal to the number of points sacrificed. Heavy stuff. Clerics function a little differently, but I'll talk about them in a second. So could you use the spellburn function in D&D? Sure, why not? Take a -2 penalty to my dex score to increase my spell save DC by 2 for this one casting, Fireball? Or maybe to add +2 to my ranged spell attack roll for Ray of Sickness? As a player, I sometimes find myself in a situation where I think, I really need this one spell to work, and it would be handy to have this as a costly resource on my back pocket. But then the question is, how do you recover those ability score points? You could make it hardcore with 1 point per long rest, or you could allow the player to spend maybe 1 hit die to recover 1 point each. 6th on the list is the concept of corruption. The rulebook says low-level wizards are powerful. High-level wizards fear for their souls. Continual use of magic results in ... changes. I can get behind this. Swinging a sword to cleave through enemies multiple times a day can certainly leave emotional scars on a person, but magic is different. Repeatedly contacting the weave and altering the nature of reality, it makes sense that it would do serious psychological damage, especially over time. In DCC, this manifests when a caster rolls a nat 1 on a spell attack, which can then force them to roll on a corruption table for the result. Some consequences are things like the character develops painful lesions on the chest and legs and open sores on the hands and feet that do not heal. Ugh, yikes. And to translate this to D&D, you could be hardcore and make your own corruption table, but I think maybe you just use the casting of higher level magic as a chance to check in with your magic user players during the next long rest. So, Jennifer, your wizard Princess Moonbeam cast Wish yesterday and altered the very fabric of space-time. How is she feeling about reality today? Any lingering hangover type effects? And you could let the players narrate their own results. Clerics are a little special in that they roll on a disapproval table for nat 1s, since they've offended their god. But the difference is that after the first nat 1, the disapproval range increases by 1, so the next nat 1 or nat 2 also causes disapproval, then 1 to 3, and so on. And then the disapproval table they roll on has several consequences related to appealing to their deity or making a sacrifice to be forgiven. Flavor-wise, this seems perfect for clerics, paladins, and possibly warlocks who offend their patrons. When you get your power from an otherworldly being, you do run the risk of offending that being sometimes. Like corruption, I think you could also work this out through roleplay in D&D. If you explain this concept to a player during a session 0, then they know that nat 1s will cause their PCs to have to reconcile with their deity through prayer or some other action, and if they don't, then maybe they don't sleep so well during the next long rest and suffer a level of exhaustion, or something like that. So there we have 7 old-school gritty rules you can pilfer and pop into D&D or Pathfinder to add some quasi-OSR crunch to your current or next campaign. And since you're here, could I ask you again for a like and subscribe? I don't want to pester you, but it really does help me by telling YouTube to put this content in front of more people. We must all please the algorithm. Now, here's that inside scoop I promised you. If you're looking at my face and thinking there's something different but you can't quite put your finger on it, I had a beard trimmer mishap and shaved off half my mustache a couple days ago. So after I was done sobbing like a baby over what I'd lost, I trimmed off the rest and got back to work. Shrug. What are you gonna do? So until next time, this is GM Jim, and thank you for watching.